So, welcome back to the second part of this RWBY fanfiction reading, White Rose Tea by Brightbriar. So, remember the last part, I managed to do one, page of the story, or one chapter of the story in 17 minutes. So maybe we can do this next one a little bit quicker, possibly get 2 done so we don't have to do 5 episodes of a single 5-part long fan fiction. So, part 2. The next Saturday, Ruby did come back. The look on her face when she saw Weiss was one of joy and relief. She bounded over to the counter, a grin plastered on her face. "I was worried you wouldn't be here. Where were you the past few days?" Weiss looked over surprised. She was worried. "I don't work most weekdays," she explained. "I just Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. The usual to have here?" "Yes, please." Blake gave Weiss a knowing glance and stepped up to the counter to take the next person's order while Weiss made the tea. Ruby was eyeing the cabinet of sweets. "I can't choose. Do I get the cinnamon roll, which was really good last time, or try something different?" "I recommend the gingerbread," Blake advised, overhearing as she took another customer's money. Ruby smiled and said she'd take one. They were unusually busy this morning. Weiss has to make 2 people's coffees while Ruby's tea brewed. She didn't have much time to converse with Ruby or to get flustered by her presence, which was still somewhat distracting, even if it wasn't completely unexpected. Ruby took the same table by the window, and once again sat there for a while, slowly sipping the tea. Weiss couldn't help but wonder why Ruby seemed to be looking over at her so often, quickly, guiltily averting her gaze whenever Weiss met it, laughing a little at herself. This time, Ruby stayed even after she finished her tea, pulling out a book from her bag. When Weiss serving drinks to a few writers in the back corner, Ruby asked her when her break was. 12:30, I get half an hour." "Cool," Ruby then returned to her reading. Weiss felt her stomach flip. Was Ruby going to wait around until 12:30 for her? Why? The rest of the morning passed pretty uneventfully. Ruby kept on catching Weiss's eye as she passed by, smiling. Her tea well and truly finished by now. She was really going to wait for her. Blake gave Weiss a quizzical look when she noticed Ruby was still there, her red cloak draped over the chair, but Weiss didn't have much of an idea of why Ruby was waiting around either, nor why she'd been coming in daily recently hoping to see her. By the time 12:30 finally came, Weiss was terrified. What if she knows? What would I say? Heck, what do I even say anyway? Why does she want to talk to me in the first place? She probably knows I like her. Damn it. But then, if she had a problem with that, why does she come back? Why did she keep coming back to find me? Weiss's internal monologue was interrupted as Blake nudged her. "You've been drying that same mug for the past 5 minutes. I think it's good." "Oh, right. Are you going to have your break or..." "Right, yes." Blake let out a long "oh" as she connected the dots as to why Ruby was still there and why Weiss was so nervous. "You'll be fine," she said, affectionately nudging her again. "You think? Of course." Weiss nodded and took one last deep breath before striding over to the table by the window. Ruby was still absorbed in her book. Weiss paused, then pulled out the chair on the other side of the table. Ruby looked up. "Is it really 12:30 already?" Weiss nodded mutely. Ruby folded the corner of the page she was on, then closed it and moved it to the side of the table. "Hi." "Hi." They stared at each other for a couple of seconds. "So," Ruby started, as lost for words as Weiss was. "Damn it, why does it have to be so awkward?" "So, she broke off, glancing around the room for something to talk about. She caught Blake's eye, and the other barista tried to stifle a laugh, then discreetly picked her own book up and waved it in the air. Weiss mouthed the words, "Thank you so much," then turned back to Ruby. "What's the book about?" Ruby's silver eyes lit up. "It's a romance book set in World War II, about a British girl who pretends to be a guy so that she can be in the Air Force, but falls in love with a German fighter pilot who was shot down over Allied territory in Italy," she said, easily, smiling. Weiss's heart skipped a beat. She was beautiful when she smiled. Weiss carefully rested her elbows on the table, folding her arms. "Does the German like her back?" Ruby shrugged. "He thinks she's a guy." Oh, of course, Weiss said quickly. But, Ruby went on tentatively, glancing at the book. The author, Riley Fisher, was originally going to make him a bisexual, or was going to make him a bisexual originally, so that he fell in love with her in the outset, but the publishers said that there was no way. As soon as published, well, Ruby relaxed, apparently relieved that Weiss shared her opinion. I know, right? It could have been so deep. He could have fallen in love with her thinking she was a guy, found out she was a girl after all, then continued to love her anyway. It could have made a huge statement about love going beyond gender and that sort of thing. Weiss nodded, about to agree, but Ruby went on. But I read on her blog that in the end she likes it better the way it is. The plot was simpler, stronger, easier to follow. So I suppose some good came out of it. Weiss was genuinely curious now. How does it end? I don't know yet. I don't think it'll be a completely happy ending. There's too many things that could go wrong. But I really hope they end up together. Weiss nodded. So Ruby was open to these sorts of relationships too. To love going beyond gender. Maybe not personally. She was probably still straight. But it was still good to know she probably wouldn't judge her if she knew. She checked her watch. Only a few minutes had passed. So, she paused, trying to think of a way to keep the conversation going. Are you new in the neighborhood? I haven't seen you until now. I definitely would have remembered you. Yes, we moved in about a month ago, a few blocks away. I normally walk, but Yang, my sister, comes on her motorbike during the week sometimes. Our father was offered a job here. Yeah, what does he do? He's a teacher at Signal. We'd have bought a house closer, but it's really expensive over there. What about your family? My father owns a mining company. My mother... It's missing a word there, and I'm going to assume it says died, but it's still missing a word. So my mother, when I was very young. Ruby's face fell. Oh wow, I'm sorry. Your grammar is so terrible that you couldn't actually make that sentence sad. No, it's fine, I'm used to it. Winter didn't take it well, though. She's my older sister, so she remembers her. Ruby nodded. Actually, my mother's dead too, she said quietly. I was really young when she was in the army. Weiss smiled weakly. I suppose we have... Oh. So... Weiss frantically searched for a topic to try to keep the conversation moving. Why do you only ever get tea? I can't get white rose anywhere else, and I get really, really high on coffee. Silence fell again after the pause came long enough that it was awkwardly. Weiss tentatively asked what she'd been dying to know for the past few hours. Why did you wait? Why do you keep coming? Or why did you... Or it should be, why do you keep coming back? Some people are not exactly perfect writers. You needed to change the tense there. She was waiting, but she still does keep coming back. It's you know, gotta get the correct tenses going in there. Ruby paused, stiffening. She glanced around the room as if looking for a reason to be here. Sighing as she gave up, defeated. I wanted to see you again, she said quietly. Weiss blinked. Really? Yeah. Why? Ruby looked behind her as if searching for a way out of this. She dropped her glaze nervously, fingering the pages of her book. I like you. Weiss's eyes widened. Ruby seemed to pick up on this, so she hastily corrected herself. Not in that way. You seem nice. I want to get to know you better. Well, I like you too, Weiss said slowly, her cheeks burning, leaving Ruby to interpret that any way she wanted. Ruby's eyes brightened, and she grinned. I'm going to keep coming back then, she said cheerfully, winking. Weiss felt her breath catch in her throat. I'd like that. The next morning, Sunday, Weiss felt incredibly happy, slightly delirious even, because she knew Ruby was coming back. Blake couldn't figure out why she was in a good mood. She was pretty generally sour this early on a Sunday. They hadn't even opened yet. They had to restock on Sunday. The owner of the place, Emerald Sustrai, had been away for the past month and had left her friend, Weiss suspected he was more than a friend, Mercury, in charge of making sure baked goods got delivered each morning, and so on. but he didn't like to hang around. Emerald was a pretty relaxed boss. She wasn't there half the time since she felt she could trust her employees. Blake sorted through the stuff Mercury dropped off while Weiss put the chairs down and made sure the coffee machine was plugged in and so on. So, Blake said, grinning, making Weiss look up. What happened yesterday? We made coffee and got paid. She tried to say as flatly as possible, but failed miserably as she literally skipped across the room to behind the counter. Ruby's coming today. Blake almost laughed at that. What happened during your lunch break? We talked, she said brightly. Blake walked over, resting her elbow on the table behind her. About what? Books mainly. Oh, adds that. Blake frowned. You seem awfully cheerful about that. Why wouldn't I be? Weiss grinned as she took Ruby's chair by the window off its table. Blake promptly concluded that she was barking mad. When they finally opened up, Weiss was ecstatic. All morning she glanced out of the frosted windows for a hint of red, or listened for the hum of her sister's motorcycle. After 2 hours of tuneless humming and whistling, wishing customers an absolutely fantastic day, smiling insistently, and Blake nearly calling a psychiatrist, Ruby turned up. Weiss's elated mood instantly turned into a terrible feeling that she hadn't thought this through. As soon as Ruby opened the door, her red cape disturbed by the wind outside. Her mind seemed to freeze up as she met her eyes, those stunning silver eyes. What do I say? What was I thinking? God, I can't even... Hey, Weiss. Weiss's neck felt a little warm now, her stomach tying itself in knots. Hi, the usual? Yes, please, but I can't stay today. Yang's waiting outside. Blake looked up, glancing at Ruby. Did you say Yang? Yeah, she's my sister, Ruby said cheerfully, while Weiss moved off awkwardly, blushing and such, to make the tea. Do you know her? Blake frowned. Wild yellow hair? Yeah, that's the one. Blake tipped her head to one side. You don't have the same surname. Ruby shook her head. We're half-sisters. How do you know her? Blake blinked. Just a thing. I thought I met her at a concert once, 3 years ago. Wonder if she remembers me. And if you remember from back at Bright Lights and Bumblebee, this was what was at the end of that. So, you can see where all this is coming from. It connects here, goes on a little bit further, with White Rose Tea, obviously, and then continues into, the long one that I don't want to say over and over again. And I honestly don't remember it because I haven't said it since I, recorded the first one, Bright Lights and Bumblebee, but, which was like a week ago. Whatever. The barista's eyes shone with emotion that Weiss couldn't miss. Curiosity, weariness, maybe even nostalgia. Ruby remained ignorant. I'll tell you where you're here. Blake's eyes widened and she was about to protest, but Ruby interrupted, oblivious. Oh, and can I get a cronut too? Chocolate, please? Helpless, Blake bit her tongue and put the cronut into the paper bag. Weiss narrowed her eyes. She hadn't missed the exchange and guessed Blake wouldn't appreciate her prying. She turned around and handed the tea to Ruby. One white rose tea, she said, smiling. Ruby held her gaze, and Weiss could feel her cheeks heat up as their eyes locked. They both did nothing but look at each other for a long moment before Weiss handed her the cup. Ruby grinned. See you tomorrow? Sure, have a good day. As Ruby left, Weiss glanced over at Blake. She was resting her head in one hand, leaning on the counter, staring into space. Weiss thought it wise not to interrupt her. She was about to tend to the empty paper takeaway cups that needed coffee in them, but Blake suddenly said, She likes you back. Weiss froze. What? Ruby, she likes you back. No, that couldn't be right. That would be a foolish thing to hope. What are the chances of Ruby liking girls? And even if that was the case, the chances of someone as innocent and bright and perfect as Ruby were even slimmer. She started making some coffee. Blake, you're mad. I hope you know that. Blake shook her head, then strode over to the coffee machine to help Weiss. No, seriously. She likes you back. Why else would she keep coming back here? I don't know. Maybe it's the tea. She said she said she likes you. Platonically. Blake narrowed her eyes a a smile playing on her lips. I don't think so. Think about it, okay? Weiss swallowed. You really think it's possible? Yes, and even if I'm wrong, if you don't tell her how you feel, you'll always regret it. She paused, running one hand through her thick black hair. You've changed since she came in. You used to be kind of bitchy. I don't mean any offense, but yeah, I know, Weiss said, grimacing. She placed a coffee cup on the counter, then called out, Alfred? Or Alfred? I don't even. It's not. Let's just move on. Blake frowned as the guy grabbed his coffee, maple syrup. No, they look really similar though, don't they? Mmm. Ah. Blake handed a cup of tea to an Arthur, then turned back to Weiss. I really think she might have feelings for you. Just think about it, okay? All right. It's part 3. uh, why does it take so long? Why is part so long? I mean, yeah, but like, ugh. All right, I think maybe it's actually like a good thing, or I think it's going well because it's like because I think there's only like 3 legitimate parts. Like, it's all the rest of the stuff. So next time we will do maybe the final part. Again, I don't remember the story because I read this one second, and I read them in the order that I'm going to be reading them here. So like on my channel, with this videos, whatever. Shut up. Let's end this.